Avem privilegiul ca astăzi să-l avem invitat pe domnul ambasador Wolfgang Ischinger, care este președintele Conferinței Securitate de la München, unul din cei mai reputați și respectați analiști de politică externă, un fost ambasador al Germaniei în Statele Unite. Ambassador Ischinger, thank you for having this interview.
It's such a pleasure to be in Bucharest. I haven't been here for quite a while, and I'm so delighted to be here to actually have a chance to present my own book in the Romanian language, which is the first foreign edition of my book. So I'm very proud. This is a great moment.
Aceasta este cartea pe care domnul ambasador Ischinger o lansează la București într-un context cât se poate de interesant. Ambassador Ischinger, why is the world in danger, especially when we are looking at Europe?
I think there are a number of reasons, but one of the most fundamental reasons is that between the West, between Europe and the Russian Federation, for example, trust, which we have tried to build up over decades, has almost totally evaporated since the illegal annexation of Crimea and the events in Donbass and the events in Syria. So there is currently a dangerous international environment, by the way, not only here in Europe between us and Russia. There is also a very dangerous environment in East Asia. Think of what's going on in North Korea. Think of what's going on currently between Hong Kong and mainland China. There are potentially explosive events. And what is lacking today is the kind of international order which everybody accepts, the rules which are obeyed by everybody. We used to believe that we have an international order that's accepted. No longer true. So this is a dangerous international situation, and I think over the last year or so it's not grown better. It's actually had a tendency of getting worse, which is why I put this title on the book.
We are very worried here in the Eastern Europe, especially in Romania, of the rising tensions between Europe and the United States. For 70 years, allies with the strongest political military alliance, NATO, having 70 years right this year. But right now we saw tensions. And what are your evaluations about the future of European-American relations?
Well, first of all, let me say that I'm a firm believer, and I will continue to be a firm believer, in a close transatlantic relationship. There is nothing that can replace, in the interest of our security here in Europe, the close association with the United States. Having said that, yes, there are currently enormous difficulties between most of us and the Trump administration, but as I have tried to say many, many times, the United States is not only the White House. The United States is, 50 governors, 100 senators, who all play a role in the management of international relations for the United States. There is a very important business community with strong interests in Europe, investments, trade. There is a very strong civil society. So my response to the current crisis in the transatlantic relationship is not, leaving the transatlantic alliance, but engage with all those with whom we can work. And there are many with whom we can work in Washington, in New York, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, and elsewhere.
So you are still optimistic about the future of transatlantic relations, especially in terms of defense and security. Even the commercial relation seems to be more and more tense.
Well, I don't think that we will go back to the status quo ante. So the world will never be what it used to be, namely that we were living under an American protective umbrella, that America took care of each time when there were big issues for Europe, which we couldn't handle ourselves. Think of the Balkan Wars, which we were unable to resolve. America had to come in. I don't think we can rely on that happening in the future. In other words, yes, the transatlantic alliance will continue to be important, but we need to take our own future more into our own hands. We need to be more responsible for ourselves, and this is why, and I'm describing this in the book, this is why we need to further develop the European Union, which is our common destiny, as a respected international actor. That's what we need to do in order to defend the interests of, essentially 500 million people, the population of the European Union.
Ambassador Ischinger, how would you analyze Romania's profile in EU, in NATO? And we are a mid-sized country, but we are trying to have a better profile, a stronger profile, especially inside in NATO and of course in the EU. And there are so many things to be happening after Romania exercised the presidency of the European Council. But how could you analyze Romania's profile right now?
Well, let me make 2 or 3 points. First of all, I think Romanians can be proud of the track record. It is for me, having been a diplomat in the 80s and 90s, it is really almost a miracle that today Romania is a respected member not only of NATO, but of the European Union. Romania has been able to increase its prosperity. The per capita income almost doubled or more than doubled over the last 20 years. So there are many things that Romanians can be proud of. Second remark, strategically speaking, I think from the point of view of Germany, we have not fully understood how important the Black Sea region, your region, is to the overall security of Europe. We tend to think, when we think about our strategic environment, we tend to think, which is not wrong, about Estonia, about Poland. We're looking straight east, and we need to learn that there is a huge strategic situation in your part, in the southeastern part of Europe, which has to do with energy, which has to do with naval, the naval presence of Russia in the Black Sea, the unresolved so-called frozen conflicts in your part of Europe. When I think of Nagorno-Karabakh, when I think of Georgia, when I think of Crimea, when I think of Donbass, when I think of Transnistria, I mean, it's a long list of unresolved issues. So I think your region, your part of Europe, deserves more strategic attention, not only from Brussels, EU-wise, but also from NATO, security-wise.
Romania is one of the most influential NATO members on the eastern flank. What is the most appropriate answer to the assertive and aggressive Russia in the last 5 years in the Black Sea, also with the illegal annexation of Crimea?
40 years ago, or 35 years ago, the NATO alliance adopted what was called the Harmel Report, which was a report elaborated by a former Belgian foreign minister. And the Harmel Report, in the era of the Cold War, suggested a double strategy: as much defense as necessary against the Soviet Union, and as much offer of cooperation and dialogue with the Soviet Union as possible. When I look at the current situation, I think the Harmel Report was actually a pretty good recipe then, and it is actually not a bad recipe today. In other words, we need to make sure we have sufficient capacity to deter anyone, including the Russian Federation, from adventurous expeditions, whether it's westward or southward, or regardless in which direction. And at the same time, we need to engage with Russia and try to recreate Russian interest in accepted rules of a European or of a global order. The order which we thought existed, unfortunately, fell apart when Russia did what they did in 2014, the annexation of Crimea, the events in Donbass. So what is our biggest task, I think, for the years and decades ahead is to find ways to re-engage with Russia, which is also, as Emmanuel Macron said 2 days ago in Biarritz, Russia happens to be a European power. It's also a nation power, but it's a European power. And we need to find ways to re-engage. But as they also say, it takes two to tango. And all we can do is signal to Russia that as we defend ourselves, we are holding out the offer of more cooperation, but it's up to them to respond to that and walk in our direction.
Germany is the most influential, let's say, political, economic power in Europe. And we are all looking to Berlin for signals, for cooperation. What will be the future of Europe with a German politician like Ursula von der Leyen heading the European Commission?
Oh, I think I'm very optimistic that Ursula von der Leyen is the exact right person to head the Commission in coming years. Let's not forget, at a moment when there are all sorts of military and security risks to our countries, she has spent the last 5 years learning the profession of defense, of the military, of security as the German defense minister. I think this is an excellent preparation for a job which goes, of course, much further than foreign policy, security, and defense. She now needs to worry about social, about economic, about financial, and many other fields. But I think the mastery of our strategic foreign policy, security, and defense situation is an enormously important precondition for a successful chairmanship, so to speak, presidency of the EU Commission. I think she'll do very fine, and she deserves all our support.
Ambassador Ischinger, congratulations for this book, The World in Danger, for being here in Bucharest for this interview, and I hope to see you soon in Bucharest or in Munich.
Thank you very much, and all I hope is that the book will find some interested Romanian readers, because it is a book about where we come from in the European Union, out of the Cold War, where your country and my country were on different sides. And it's such a great story, a success story, that we are now on the same side of history and of the future. Thank you very much.